Hi, I've just seen a piece on a senior figure within Black Lives Matter, which I think is quite eye-opening. And the interesting thing about the source that I'm going to cite is it's not what you might expect. That is to say, it's not a conservative or right-wing source. It's not Fox News. It's not The Spectator or the Daily Telegraph or the Daily Mail or something like that you might kind of expect to be critical of Black Lives Matter. This source is none other than the Huffington Post, which is a publication that I certainly would not consider to be middle ground. It's pretty woke, it's pretty well to the left. So even the Huffington Post has an article calling out this person, and I think that says something. So the article is by James DeFiore, and I'm not going to read out the whole thing, it's quite long, but this is basically the gist of it. The Black Lives Matter Toronto co founder needs to resign. That's his opening. It's a blog more than an article. But he follows Yusra Khogali has made a habit of directing violent, hateful language towards people with white skin, so much that I feel comfortable calling her out. When an individual at the helm of what could be a transformative movement distracts the public with hate, it's time for that individual to go. And I'll read out some of the significant parts of this. You've probably never heard of Yusra Khogali before. As a co-founder of the Toronto chapter of Black Lives Matter, Khogali is used to being an outspoken leader for a movement that has seen more publicity than nearly any other activist group in North America over the last 2 years. She has been at the forefront of nearly every racialized controversy in Toronto and is one of the most visible members of the organization. And now, respectfully, it's time for her to resign. So some cases that he cites in this, in fact, he goes on to say, now normally my white skin would admittedly preclude me from even suggesting that a black activist should hang up the megaphone. I think that's silly, but like I say, this is coming from a left-wing perspective. But Kogali has made a habit of directing violent, hateful language towards people with white skin, so much so that I feel comfortable calling her out. She once mused that just by having white skin, white people are subhuman. Subhuman. Now, this is basically the language the Nazis used. That isn't hyperbole. They dehumanized the Jewish people and others, gypsies, homosexuals, Slavs, by calling them subhuman. She tried to qualify that statement by saying white people do not have a high amount of melanin, which prevents them absorbing light, and with a sense of moral clarity. Now, maybe if this was their only controversial statement, all could be forgiven. But this is a pattern of hate that can't be ignored any longer. In April 2016, Khogali tweeted, "Please Allah, give me strength to not kill these men and white folks out here today. Please, please, please." I actually saw this in another source and I thought, well, did she really say that? Was it, has it been edited? Has it been? But this again is coming from the Huffington Post. I keep stressing that because they've been very enthusiastically supportive of Black Lives Matter. The tweet was widely covered, and many media outlets faced scrutiny for focusing on that tweet instead of the issues Black communities are facing, as if it's not relevant. Um, and then he goes on to virtue signal a bit, but he says, "Oh, that's valid criticism of the media by unjustly focusing on the tweets instead of issues that affect Black people." But then he goes on to say, "But that can't absolve Kugali from being accountable for constantly inserting hate speech into the effort of Toronto activism. If I were a member of BLM, I'd hopefully understand that her words are harmful to the movement's stated goals of ending institutionalized racism, and the more she speaks, the less credibility the movement carries. There is a strange trend that some activists use to provide themselves cover for engaging in hate speech. They say that because the system they live under has racial problems, they should not be absolved from being held accountable when they make violent, absurd statements, especially against whites. Um, Recently, Kigali labelled Justin Trudeau, a white supremacist terrorist, for not changing a refugee policy as a response to Donald Trump's executive order that would temporarily halt the flow of refugees and immigrants from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. Trump's decision is controversial even among Republicans, but saddled Trudeau with a label as symbolic as white supremacist terrorists is to engage in the kind of activism that belittles your own cause. Um, it's patently counterintuitive to believe that this is a viable. It's like I said, I'm not going to read out the whole article; it's quite long, but you get the gist here, right? Um, I've just contacted their group on, and the video's starting up, so don't want the sound in the background. I've just contacted the Facebook group. No doubt they will delete my comments. They'll whine about being victims. They'll call me a right-wing troll. But as a white guy, I resent this. I resent a senior figure in an important movement, a significant movement, basically getting the green light to stir up hatred against all white people. If you're a white ally and you support this, you're a fool. You really are a fool because you might be fine with her dehumanizing yourself, but she's not actually helping black people by doing so. So if you're one of these white allies that sort of is okay with anti-white racism, consider it from another point of view, consider that she's damaging the movement. Do you care about that? Um, she sounds like a really, really hate-filled individual, an extremist, an absolute extremist. Um, so why is Black Lives Matter Toronto holding her up? I think the reality is that from the start, Black Lives Matter has had some extreme far left elements. I think a lot of people have joined the movement in Canada, in Britain, in the United States with good intentions. They see issues like police brutality and they want that tackled, understandably so. But when you have someone, I mean, Toronto's a major city, so I assume it's a significant chapter of Black Lives Matter. Um, and this is the co-founder we're talking about. We're not talking about some random activist here. This is the co-founder of the movement, right? In that city. So she is a guiding voice for the movement in that city. And it's just absurd. I don't agree with everything he says in that article. I think it's absolutely legitimate for the media to call out extremist rhetoric. Um, but the more people that realize this stuff, the better. The more that they are exposed, then the better. Majid Nawaz has said he supports Black Lives Matter as a movement, but he has said they need to guard their left flank. Now, the problem is, in my opinion, Black Lives Matter is in some ways an extreme movement because they're not interested in dialogue. They're not interested in, wanting to improve things. They're just interested in promoting a victimhood narrative and silencing and cancelling anyone who gets in their way. They're bullies, actually. I'm talking about the leadership. They're not interested in dialogue. I remember the time they even heckled Bernie Sanders when he was speaking out in defense of them. This is a movement that unquestionably has anti-white racism in its midst. And until Black Lives Matter apologists recognize that and do something about it, like if you are a supporter of Black Lives Matter and you claim that you're just standing against white racism or you're standing up for Black lives, fair enough, right? But you cannot complain about Black Lives Matter being called racist if Black Lives Matter doesn't act against the racists in its midst. And Yusra Khogali is an absolute racist. Absolute racist. How any white person could support her is insane. Now, no doubt this guy will be called, he's going to be now denounced as a traitor to the cause. He'll be called all the names under the sun. It's you could just see that happening. I think actually far from the media using negative language about Black Lives Matter, I think they've been overly ingratiating to Black Lives Matter. I think they've been overly accommodating to Black Lives Matter. I don't think Black Lives Matter has been fully held to account. I don't think they've been fully scrutinized. And you get someone like Don Lemon on CNN who tries to publicly shame uh, other black men who speak out, for example, Terry Crews. He falsely claimed, this was an interview he had with the actor Terry Crews, who recently warned that Black Lives Matter was turning into a black supremacist movement. Don Lemon claimed that the focus is just on police brutality, it's not on gangland violence. But as Terry Crews pointed out, that is just disingenuous because Black Lives Matter has morphed into a lot of other things. It is simply wrong to say this movement is just focused on the matter of police killings. It's went well beyond that. And anyone that can't see that, they really aren't paying attention. Um, I'm pleased that I wasn't so naive as to be taken in by this movement because I was wary from it, certainly from the events of last month, but I've long been wary of some of the underlying messages of its activists. And, I think a lot of people have been taken in by it, kind of thought, okay, well, they're just a movement, a group, and there's debate even around that. Is it a movement? Is it it's not a homogenous group exactly, but certainly its leadership, which interestingly tends to be female dominated. I'm not sure the reason for that, but it's noticeable. Certainly the American founders were all women, and yeah, I think that it's there's definitely a consistent narrative which is pushing a victimhood narrative and pushing a very anti-white narrative. Um, so you can be absolutely sure Black Lives Matter Toronto will do nothing about this. They will be proud of her. They will no doubt hold her up. And all I can say to that is I really hope they lose support because they deserve to lose support. A movement that behaves this way, a movement whose founders and leaders start stirring up hatred, deserves to lose support, right? Any movement that has reckless leadership or inflammatory leadership deserves to lose support. It's the same with Extinction Rebellion. Roger Hallam has called for the toppling of governments. He's not content just. It's again. I think it's well beyond just green issues. I think Extinction Rebellion is an anarchist organization that wants nothing less than the dismantling of Western society. I really believe that. Um, and if people think I'm being paranoid, all I would say is look a bit deeper into these things. You know, don't just look at their publicly stated goals. Look a bit deeper into the philosophy and the mindset of some of the key people behind these groups, and you'll get shocked because there really is a far left worldview, and in the case of Black Lives Matter, a vitriolic, dehumanizing anti-white racism that is going on there. And I think it's a bit disgraceful, actually, that the media hasn't held this woman to account. Why is, what is it in Canada, CBC, I believe? Why are they not getting her to an interview, putting her on the spot? Like, how do you justify these racist attitudes you've come out with? Put her on the spot. I find often these people are very arrogant. It's like Dr. Priyamvada Gopal, so arrogant in their own racism that they don't even have the sense to sort of say, oh, well, I was taken out of context, or I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, or something like that. They stand by it. They absolutely stand by their attitudes. So that should make it easier for people to see the truth about where such movements are heading. Um, there you have it. So, shaming you, Yusra Khogali, you are a hateful bigot. You do not have superior arguments to anyone else in terms of somehow pervertedly trying to justify your hate. Um, you're simply a bigot. And that's all there is to it. As far as I'm concerned, you should be charged with promoting hate speech. And actually, there's violence in that as well. Um, so there you have it. So I actually want this video to reach out, not to reach to the converted, but maybe people who might be kind of sympathetic to Black Lives Matter, but they're not sure. Well, this is who it's being led by, right? If you're a Black Lives Matter activist and you say, oh no, but I don't hate white people, prove it. Prove it. Condemn her.